In today's video, we dive into the most terrifying gymnastic deaths ever. From a reckless instructor who ignored condemned equipment warnings while teaching children, to a social media influencer who attempted a backflip off a metal beam without proper training, trusting her friends could catch her if something went wrong. It was October 3rd, 2015 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The Community Recreation Center buzzed with Saturday morning activity as families gathered for children's gymnastics classes. Parents lined the observation windows with coffee cups in hand, watching their young athletes tumble and flip across the worn but colorful mats. Atlas Crane was 26 years old, a college student who worked part-time as a children's gymnastics instructor at the local recreation center. He had been a solid high school gymnast, earning regional recognition, but never quite reaching elite status. His casual attitude toward rules and safety protocols made him popular with students, but concerning to facility management. The recreation center operated on a limited budget, with several apparatus awaiting scheduled replacement after recent safety audits identified structural wear. The parallel bars had been marked for reinforcement and restricted from advanced demonstrations while maintenance planning was underway. Atlas had been specifically warned about the equipment's condition by the facility director, who noted visible stress fractures in the upright posts and loose rail connections. Despite these warnings, Atlas continued using the condemned equipment for his own training and demonstrations. He dismissed concerns from other instructors, claiming his experience allowed him to judge equipment safety better than maintenance reports. His overconfidence led him to ignore obvious signs of deterioration, including loose bolts and increasing wobble during use. The situation escalated during a busy Saturday morning when Atlas was teaching a children's class with several parents observing. Eager to impress the audience and demonstrate advanced skills, he decided to perform a complex routine on the parallel bars. Other instructors had specifically requested that he avoid using the equipment during classes, but Atlas felt their concerns were overblown and proceeded with his demonstration. The incident occurred at 10:15 a.m. during a beginner's class, with 8 children and approximately 12 parents present. Atlas had positioned the parallel bars in the center of the gymnasium to maximize visibility for his demonstration. The equipment showed obvious signs of instability, with the left support post visibly shifting during his mount. Atlas began his routine with basic swinging elements, building momentum for more advanced skills. Witnesses observed the left parallel bar flexing abnormally under his weight, but he continued the routine without pause. As he transitioned into a handstand position, the stress on the compromised support bracket reached its breaking point. The left support post failed catastrophically, causing the entire left side of the apparatus to collapse. Atlas, inverted and supporting his full body weight on his hands, had no time to react as the bar gave way beneath him. He fell approximately 4 feet, but his trajectory carried him between the remaining right bar and the collapsed left side. His neck struck the intact right bar as his momentum carried him downward, forcing his cervical spine into extreme compression and causing immediate loss of motor control. Witnesses reported that training stopped immediately as instructors cleared the area while Atlas remained entangled in the collapsed apparatus. Emergency responders arrived within 6 minutes, but were unable to restore Atlas's breathing. The damaged frame created a difficult access angle, requiring responders to stabilize the apparatus before fully reaching him. Despite rapid intervention, he showed no signs of recovery. The medical examiner determined that Atlas died from catastrophic cervical spine trauma sustained during the apparatus collapse, resulting in immediate respiratory failure. The investigation revealed that the equipment failure was entirely predictable, given the documented maintenance issues and explicit warnings about its condition. The investigation resulted in the suspension of the center's gymnastics certification until updated equipment standards and supervision policies were implemented. The weekend instructor's arrogance had cost him everything on those parallel bars. But in Denver, a former collegiate athlete's dangerous overconfidence was about to turn a routine training session into a fatal mistake. It was March 8th, 2016 in Denver, Colorado. Inside a private elite training facility, the afternoon session moved at a steady rhythm as athletes prepared for upcoming competitions. Chalk dust lingered in the air. Spring floor panels flexed beneath repeated tumbling passes, and coaches rotated between apparatus stations while monitoring conditioning drills. Xander Ravencrest was 29 years old and worked part-time as a coach while maintaining his own advanced training schedule. 3 years earlier, he had been a successful collegiate gymnast, but a shoulder injury ended his competitive trajectory. Former teammates described him as technically skilled but impulsive, someone who often pushed past structured safety limits. At the new facility, staff noticed early patterns that raised concern. He preferred to train alone, minimized the role of spotters, and treated supplemental mats as unnecessary obstacles rather than protective tools. During his second month, multiple incidents prompted formal documentation. Xander arrived before scheduled sessions to practice unsupervised tumbling. Coaches reported seeing him reposition training mats without approval and demonstrating high-level skills for younger athletes who were still mastering basics. The facility manager issued written warnings emphasizing supervision requirements and progressive skill development. While he complied briefly, the pattern returned within weeks. His routines grew more ambitious, and several coaches noted that he seemed focused on proving he could still perform at an elite level despite his injury history. On the afternoon of the incident, approximately 15 athletes and 4 coaches were present during an open floor session. Conditioning circuits ran along one side, while advanced gymnasts used the diagonal tumbling strip. Witnesses later stated that Xander cleared away several portable training mats positioned near the corner of the floor, explaining that he needed uninterrupted space for a demonstration. Coaches observed the setup and began moving toward him, but he initiated his approach before any adjustment could be enforced. At 3:47 p.m., Xander began a powerful run across the spring floor. His round-off entry and back handspring connected smoothly, generating height for a double layout attempt, a skill he had struggled to complete consistently even during his competitive peak. The first rotation appeared controlled, but during the second flip, his body alignment shifted. His hips opened too early, reducing rotation speed. Witnesses described a sudden loss of air awareness as his shoulders turned unevenly and his head dropped forward. Instead of preparing for a flat landing, his momentum carried him downward at an acute angle. He struck the spring floor head first, the compression forcing his neck into extreme flexion. The impact produced a sharp sound that caused nearby athletes to stop immediately. Xander's body became motionless upon contact, remaining in a fixed position that coaches recognized as a possible cervical spine injury. Staff cleared the surrounding area and initiated emergency procedures while maintaining stabilization until responders arrived. Paramedics reached the facility within 8 minutes and assumed care. Despite rapid intervention, Xander showed no signs of responsiveness. A later medical examination identified a catastrophic upper cervical dislocation with severe spinal cord trauma consistent with instantaneous loss of vital function. Investigators reviewed security footage and internal reports, confirming that Xander had removed training mats and proceeded without required supervision. The facility's safety protocols were reviewed during the investigation. Authorities determined that staff had issued multiple prior warnings and that supervision procedures were in place at the time of the incident. No structural or equipment failures were identified. The case concluded with Xander's actions classified as a violation of established training rules rather than a system malfunction. In the months that followed, the facility implemented stricter enforcement measures, including mandatory oversight for all advanced tumbling attempts and revised policies preventing athletes or coaches from altering safety setups without approval. Training continued, but the diagonal corner of the floor where the incident occurred remained unused for several weeks. A quiet reminder of how quickly a controlled environment could shift when experience replaced caution. The impulsive coach had paid the ultimate price for ignoring safety protocols. In Los Angeles, a social media influencer's desperate chase for viral fame was about to transform an abandoned warehouse into a deadly stage. It was June 12, 2018 in Los Angeles, California. The abandoned warehouse stood silent in the industrial district, its broken windows and graffitied walls hiding the makeshift gymnastics equipment inside. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the damaged roof, illuminating the dangerous setup that squatters had cobbled together from salvaged materials. Nova Silverton was 25 years old, a student who had built a modest social media following by posting gymnastics videos from her team practices and local gym sessions. Her content focused on increasingly dangerous stunts designed to generate views and engagement. She had been banned from 2 local gymnastics facilities for filming without permission and attempting skills beyond her ability level in pursuit of viral content. After several videos failed to gain significant traction, Nova began planning increasingly high-risk stunts designed to attract more attention online. She began scouting abandoned locations around the city, looking for dramatic backdrops that would make her videos stand out from typical gym footage. The warehouse she discovered had been vacant for over 3 years, with squatters having installed makeshift gymnastics equipment throughout the building. The setup included improvised beams made from construction materials and foam padding salvaged from various sources. Nova saw the location as perfect for her purposes, dangerous enough to be exciting, but seemingly equipped for gymnastics activities. She recruited 3 friends to serve as camera operators and spotters, despite none of them having gymnastics experience. Nova planned an elaborate video featuring increasingly difficult skills, culminating in a backflip off a narrow metal beam positioned 15 feet above the concrete floor. Her friends expressed serious concerns about the height and lack of proper safety equipment, but Nova dismissed their warnings and chose to proceed with the stunt despite repeated safety concerns. The incident occurred at 2:30 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon inside the abandoned warehouse. Nova had positioned her friends at various angles to capture multiple camera perspectives of her planned stunt. The improvised beam consisted of a raised steel I-beam supported by concrete pillars, positioned roughly 15 feet above a bare concrete floor with no protective mats below. Nova climbed to the beam using a makeshift ladder constructed from wooden pallets. Once positioned, she spent several minutes posing for photos and brief video clips, building anticipation for the main stunt. Her friends continued expressing concerns about the height and hard landing surface, but she insisted the content would be worth the risk. Her attempt at the backflip began confidently, with Nova launching herself backward off the beam with appropriate rotation. However, the narrow width of the beam and her nervousness caused her to slip during takeoff rather than achieving a clean jump. Instead of clearing the beam and rotating through the air, she fell immediately with minimal rotation. Nova plummeted 15 feet in an uncontrolled fall, striking the concrete floor head first. The impact occurred directly in front of her friends, who captured the entire sequence on their phones. Witnesses reported hearing a sharp impact as she struck the concrete floor, after which she remained motionless. Nova's friends immediately called emergency services, while the isolated industrial location and unclear access points slowed emergency response times. Paramedics arrived 23 minutes after the initial call, finding Nova unconscious with massive head trauma and no detectable pulse. Attempts at resuscitation were unsuccessful due to the severity of her injuries. The medical examiner determined that Nova died from catastrophic brain injury caused by skull fractures and hemorrhaging. Investigators determined that the severity of the head trauma left no realistic chance of survival despite emergency intervention. Her death was ruled accidental, with contributing factors including the dangerous location and lack of safety equipment. The warehouse owner faced no legal consequences, as Nova and her friends had been trespassing on clearly marked private property. If these stories are keeping you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more incredible content. It was September 14th, 2017, in Houston, Texas. Inside a private gymnastics academy, the evening training block moved under bright fluorescent lights as athletes rotated between apparatus stations. Coaches tracked repetitions on clipboards while the vault runway remained active for advanced drills ahead of an upcoming qualifying event. Cordelia Stone was 22 years old, an elite-level gymnast attempting to regain competitive standing after several inconsistent seasons. She trained 6 hours daily, splitting time between conditioning, vault repetition, and flexibility work. Staff records showed she had been working on a Yurchenko double full for several months, a high-difficulty vault requiring precise timing off the table and strong aerial awareness. Progress had stalled, and training notes indicated repeated under-rotation during post-flight. As the qualifying deadline approached, her practice schedule intensified rather than easing. Coaches observed growing tension around her vault sessions. Attempts became more frequent, rest periods shortened, and technical corrections were rushed to keep pace with training goals. Facility logs noted several days where she exceeded the recommended number of high-impact vault repetitions. While safety mats and regulation equipment remained in place, the increased volume reduced recovery time and amplified fatigue. Other athletes later reported noticing hesitation during her final run-ups in the week leading to the incident. The evening session began at 7 p.m., with only a few athletes still training. Cordelia completed basic warm-ups and several lower difficulty vaults before moving to full attempts. Her first 2 Yurchenko double full attempts lacked sufficient height, forcing deep landings that required spotting assistance. Coaches discussed reducing intensity for the night, but Cordelia requested another attempt while the runway remained open. With standard mats positioned around the landing area and supervision present, the third attempt proceeded. At 7:23 p.m., Cordelia began her approach run. Witnesses described a slight hesitation in her final steps before the springboard, reducing the speed normally needed for strong block power off the vault table. She completed the round-off entry and back handspring onto the table, but generated less vertical lift than previous attempts. During post-flight, her body opened early, slowing rotation before the second twist could complete. Instead of traveling safely toward the landing mat, her trajectory drifted sideways. Still rotating, she collided with the edge of the vault table, striking the left side of her head before falling toward the landing area. The impact redirected her body downward, and she landed face down without protective extension. Training stopped immediately as coaches moved to stabilize her position and clear the runway. Emergency services were called within seconds. Cordelia remained unconscious while staff monitored breathing and circulation until paramedics arrived approximately 12 minutes later. She was transported to a regional trauma center where imaging revealed a fractured skull, severe intracranial bleeding, and cervical spine trauma caused by the initial apparatus strike. Surgeons performed emergency procedures to relieve pressure, but swelling progressed rapidly overnight. 18 hours after the accident, Cordelia was pronounced dead due to complications from traumatic brain injury. The medical examiner concluded that the primary cause of death was massive brain hemorrhage resulting from blunt force impact during the failed vault attempt. Investigators reviewed training schedules, equipment setup, and supervision records. No mechanical failures were identified, and regulation safety mats were confirmed to be in place at the time. A subsequent safety audit highlighted concerns about training volume and athlete fatigue during high-difficulty skill progression. The Academy's elite certification was later suspended pending revised safety protocols, including stricter repetition limits for advanced vault attempts and mandatory recovery intervals between high-impact skills. Training resumed months later under updated guidelines, but the vault runway where the accident occurred remained unused for several weeks. A quiet reminder of how quickly a single miscalculation during a complex skill could turn routine preparation into a fatal outcome. The elite gymnast's relentless pursuit of perfection had ended in tragedy. In Tampa, a former high school star's refusal to accept reality was about to prove that 8 years away from the sport had stolen more than just his skills. It was August 19, 2016 in Tampa, Florida. The private training facility was nearly empty during the evening hours, with only the sound of a single athlete preparing for what would be his final routine. The air conditioning hummed quietly overhead, while the last traces of daylight faded through the tall windows, leaving the gymnasium bathed in artificial light. Ren Blackstone was 26 years old, working as an insurance adjuster while attempting to recapture his athletic glory from 8 years earlier. He had been a promising gymnast during high school, earning a partial college scholarship before quitting the sport at 18 due to burnout and family pressure to pursue a traditional career. Working in a mundane office job, he became obsessed with returning to his former skill level. He enrolled at an elite training facility, paying premium rates for private coaching sessions. However, Ren's expectations immediately clashed with reality. His coaches recommended starting with basic conditioning and fundamental skills to rebuild his strength and flexibility gradually. Ren viewed this approach as insulting and a waste of his money, demanding immediate access to advanced apparatus and skills. His physical condition had deteriorated significantly during his 8-year absence from gymnastics. He had gained 30 pounds and lost most of his flexibility and strength. Despite obvious limitations, Ren insisted on attempting skills that had been challenging even during his competitive peak. He dismissed his coach's concerns as overcautiousness and began training independently during off hours. The breaking point came when Ren announced his intention to perform his former signature move, a complex release skill on the high bar that he had successfully completed only a handful of times during his competitive career. His coach refused to supervise the attempt, citing safety concerns and Ren's obvious physical limitations. Undeterred, Ren scheduled a private evening session with a less experienced coach who was intimidated by his aggressive demands. The incident occurred at 8:45 p.m. during a private training session with minimal supervision. Only Ren and a junior coach were present in the facility. The high bar had been properly set up with regulation safety mats, but the skill Ren attempted required precise timing and strength that he no longer possessed. Ren's approach to the bar appeared confident, despite earlier signs that his timing and conditioning had not fully returned. He began building momentum through basic swinging elements, preparing for the release move that required him to let go of the bar, perform a full rotation in the air, and re-grasp the bar before completing his routine. As he initiated the release, it became immediately apparent that his timing was severely compromised. His hands separated from the bar too early in the swing, before he had generated sufficient height and rotation. Instead of achieving the graceful arc necessary for the skill, Ren's body followed a steep, downward trajectory. He rotated backward through the air, but failed to complete even half of the required rotation before gravity took control. His body struck the mat in an inverted position, forcing his neck into extreme compression as his momentum drove downward. The junior coach witnessed Ren's body go completely limp upon contact with the mat. Emergency responders arrived within 7 minutes of the coach's call, finding Ren unconscious and unresponsive. Initial examination suggested high cervical spinal trauma, with loss of movement below the neck consistent with severe neurological injury. He was transported to the regional trauma center, where surgeons confirmed multiple cervical vertebrae fractures and catastrophic spinal cord trauma. Ren remained on life support for 3 days while his family made difficult decisions about his care. His injuries were deemed incompatible with meaningful recovery, and he died from complications related to his paralysis when his family chose to discontinue artificial life support. The medical examiner ruled his death accidental, caused by catastrophic spinal injuries sustained during the gymnastics accident. The training facility underwent a routine safety review after the incident as investigators examined supervision protocols and training records. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.